Hi, this is Keiko from Brooklyn Shoe Space. Today for Shoe Talks Quarantine Edition, we have David Fillar from Vibram. Some people call it Vibram. He's a designer there, and he just, during this quarantine, he started a video series called An Untold Narrative. We'll hear all about his projects, what he's up to, and how he got to where he is now in the footwear industry. He actually came to take a Brooklyn Shoe Space class as well, maybe 4 or 5 years back. So we'll hear how from there, even from before, how his journey went. Let's see if I can invite him on this call. Yes, he's here. So
Hey,
hi. Hi, how are you? So good to
good.
see
How are
you.
you? Good to see you.
Good. What is going on during COVID? I feel like this lockdown, your like creative juices are overflowing.
Yes. I know some people have taken it as an opportunity to reset. I don't think there's a right approach to it, but I've been just working on a lot of different things that I never had time for, or that other things consume the time that I could have been doing. So it's been a lot of fun in certain aspects. Obviously, it's not a good situation in general, but
Yeah,
I've been trying to make the best of it.
that is great. Do you have anybody affected in your community or you're okay?
Yeah, so I live in Worcester, Massachusetts. My
Hmm.
parents live in Connecticut. My aunt and uncle tested positive, so
Wow.
yeah,
But
people in my family have been affected by it, but overall, everything worked out in the end. They got through it,
okay,
so.
good.
Um,
I'm glad.
but I've been stuck inside 600 square feet for the past 3.5 months, so I haven't really done too much.
Right. Are you back in the offices? Do you go back to your office soon or
So
are you
nope,
working from home?
we've been work from home. Our factory, which Brooklyn Shoe Space had the opportunity to visit as well in North Brookfield, has remained open throughout COVID. We have taken a lot of precautions. They temperature check everybody before you enter, and there's
Mm-hmm.
social distancing. There's cleaning crews. There's the whole 9 yards to keep up with the state of Massachusetts and laws and stuff like that. So
Right,
uh,
right, right.
it's been good to see that way.
Okay. I mean, I'm glad you can work from home and then you can kind of juggle your time around to do all your other projects. I
Yeah,
don't want to assume everybody knows you, so I wanted to introduce you. Do you think you can introduce yourself? Introduction to what
sure.
you do, who you
So,
are, where did you start shoemaking or shoe career?
yep, my name's David Fillar. I don't know how formal. I'm 28 years old. I work for Vibram. It was my first job outside of college. I just passed the 6 year anniversary here, so I'm
Congratulations.
super thanks. I'm super fortunate. I started off as a designer. I now am the design and development manager for Vibram USA. So
Wow.
I work with a team of really great people on the design and development side for all USA projects, which is a lot of fun. Hey Dan,
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey joined up.
Yeah, Mr. Daly. Yeah, that's great.
But my background is in industrial design. I went to
Hmm.
college at Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston, and so then I just had a passion for footwear, and I met a couple people along the way, my junior and senior year, and just knew that footwear was something that I wanted to get into, right? And since then, there's a lot of work that goes into finding your way. But you hinted at in the intro of my podcast and YouTube series, An Untold Narrative. The prelude, I actually go into in depth of kind of how long it takes, sending hundreds of emails, not getting any responses, and super fortunate that I got two, and out of those 100, and one of those was Vibram, and things have been going really well, for the past 6 years, and there's been a lot of opportunities and a lot of growth, and been able to work on some tremendous product, and
Hmm.
even stumbled into awesome people and companies
Hmm.
like Brooklyn Shoe Space and yourself. So
Mm. Did you come to class like on the earlier years at Vibram?
So I remember this was probably 5 years ago. I would guess
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
I was in New York City visiting customers of ours, and I found you guys. I believe it was through Instagram, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot. It was back when, Instagram was a lot more organic, and you can meet and you can see people a lot
Yeah.
like easier than what it is today, and it's more
Yeah.
flooded. And I remember I just reached out, was like, hey, like I'm in the city. You guys care if I come by the
Yeah,
studio?
yeah.
I met you and the other woman's name. I forget what her name was, the
Bonnie.
blonde.
Oh, blonde. Rebecca?
Yeah,
Or
Rebecca.
Elizabeth. Maybe Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember we got the tour and the whole 9 yards. We sat, we had a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
about Vibram, and then also, you guys and what you're trying to build and what you're working on and stuff like that. And obviously the worlds collide. Vibram has a business in recrafting, resoling.
Yeah.
Even in terms of like entrepreneurs and startups, of getting soles is probably the hardest part, right?
It is. It is.
You can find leathers and textiles, but it's really difficult to find a sole.
Yep.
So that's probably how our relationship began, of just like random interest. And then over the years, obviously, I think it was like 6 months later, you guys took a van or a bus up to North Brookfield, Mass, which was a lot of fun. And we did a super cool tour, with you guys. So that was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
Easily 5 years ago.
Yeah. Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. Indeed.
Yeah. And I think at the time you just came out with like the, what's it called? The grip, the one that just doesn't.
Oh, the
Arctic grip. Yeah.
Yep.
That was amazing. I mean, are there, there's brands that use it now, I'm assuming.
Arctic Grip's been a platform of ours for wet ice that's done tremendously well. It was really an innovation in the field. It was something completely different. It went viral in terms of like organic reach, and like, because as soon as you tried it, it was like, holy crap, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So
you had like a setup with like ice and handles. And you're like walking your regular shoes on these, and you're like trying not to fall, and then try this on, and it was like it doesn't slip.
Exactly. Yeah.
Were you a part of it at all, or was it kind of like right around when you joined the company?
So Arctic Grip started its infancy, you could say, even before my time, but I was one of the key components and players, you can say, in the mass execution of it. I remember there was a point where we would fly back and forth to China every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we'd have to field test it, and you'd have to work in it, and then you'd get results back, and then you'd have to tweak it, and you have to make it better. And it was this constant evolution. So it was a really fun holistic technology to really launch as a group and as a team. But overall, that tech took like 3 to 4 years to actually get to where it was. So
R&D takes time. I think 3-4 years is quick, but I guess you have a history of products, so it's
everything's an evolution these days.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a little bit back to yourself. Like, who are your mentors? How did you get into, like, I know you did mention it in your video, but for those who haven't checked out.
Mentors is one of those conversations that's really interesting to me, because from the people that I speak to, or that I want to surround myself with, it's very difficult to find mentors, like really good ones, right? And then everybody's definition of one seems to be a little bit different. I never personally had a mentor, right? I think what's driven me to constantly work on new things and learn new things, right? Even with, doing paintings and now making clothing just because I want to, and making a podcast. It's like, I honestly, like, I always go back to being an immigrant, and like being born in a different country, and being raised in a household where you grew up with nothing, and that drive to build a life that's much different than what you recognize as a child is a force that you can't buy. And I think, so when you talk about mentorship, it's like, Nobody's ever reached out a hand to me. I can say that there are a lot of people who have influenced me and raised me up and propelled me forward 1000%.
Yeah.
But I couldn't give you one name today. And I think that's even more so why I try to do an untold narrative, to bring people on this podcast and this platform, because they're on the ground floor like I am, right? They hustle, they work really hard, they have an incredible story, and that's really powerful. They haven't made it. They aren't rich, they aren't famous, they, you know, haven't reached that like peak thing that you're going to see on Hypebeast or whatever. They're on the nitty gritty ground floor. And I think that's where you should surround yourself, is with those people, because they're the ones that can elevate you more than a mentor can.
I see. That's great to hear, like, your view on it. So you've been at Vibrant 6 years. I see like new initiatives that you took, like there was like a forum that you kind of collaborated with a couple brands.
Yeah.
Do you think you could? What do you call it?
The Vibrant Sneaker Forums.
Yes.
So yeah, that was it's definitely like a really fun and cool interactive thing that we started doing. I think our first one was September of 2019. We have we have an office or an experience center in Boston, across from Boston University on Commonwealth Avenue. It's called our Boston Connection Lab. And we started hosting these live events where we would have people, even, you know, Dan Bailey joined this a little bit earlier. You know, he was part of our first one, where we bring people in and, you know, we just have a conversation about what's going on, right? We did one more design focused, we did one more sustainable focused, we did one that was on a C-level, you know, with executives, and then we did our first digital one last month, which was obviously different, but still powerful and exciting. And they're going to continue to grow and evolve, and I think it's a way for us to really understand and hear what the consumer's telling us, right? So anybody, you know, like you and I, who purchases or looks for the Vibrant brand, you know, they have questions and they want to interact with other people and our partners, you know, like Pencil and Garrickson, you know, on the last one. So they've just been a really fun way for us to interact with new people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Were you propelling this project to go forward? What were you? I felt like maybe it's like, I felt like it's super fresh things that you're doing. I see more fresh things from them since I've met you. So I felt like, I don't know if it's like coincidental or like those are
your words, not mine. I appreciate that. I hope there's a little bit of overlap and it's not just coincidence. But yeah, no, the sneaker forums were a fun initiative that I was part of from the beginning, but it's always a team effort, right? I mean, it was a marketing thing. You know, Alan, our CMO, had the idea, and like, you know, to come up with this, you know, how do we get, you know, people into the space? You know, what can we do? I mean, we held, you know, yoga classes in the space, and we held running clubs, and like, it's a different way, again, just to interact with people, right? Like educate people on our brand. You know, we're not just a 80-year-old hiking brand. You know, there's so much more to that. Yeah,
definitely. And well, tell us a little bit more about your personal projects. So what is your favorite project that you've worked on during COVID, out of multiple you have?
I don't have a favorite. It's like when I try to do something, I'm like all in on everything. Especially if I really like it, and like I won't stop until I build 10,000 hours into it. Usually at the 10,000 hour mark, then I'm like, I'm bored of it, and then I go to the next thing. I have a very long history of doing this with certain things. So, but no, I mean, like, I started a second job teaching painting classes last year. And so during COVID, I've been able to paint every single night, right? Which has been a lot of fun. You know, I think I've become fairly decent at it, and I'm like trying to sell paint and art online, and it's a new thing to learn, right? Like how
Yeah.
Etsy operates. I'm like,
Yeah.
is it just a women's focus platform, or can you
Yeah.
get sneakerheads to buy from it? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
to me, that's really interesting. Learning that, you know,
Yeah.
painting's been one. Obviously, um, the podcast has been something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. In the
Mm-hmm.
first episode, I talk about that, and like, to me, again, it was like every time I'd listen to somebody's podcast, it's always interviewees of people who have made it, and I was like,
Right.
I'm really tired of. It's great. There's a place for those people, right?
Of
Everybody wants
course.
to
Of course.
learn from
Yeah.
the people who have
Yeah.
made it.
Yeah.
You can learn so much from the people who are grinding every single day, if
Mm-hmm.
not more.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to create, right? So we're 10 episodes in. That's been so every time I like have a conversation with somebody, we just launched Chris Dixon's from Pencil today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's probably, I'm biased because I run it, but I think it's the best one yet. And we've had some really incredible people on so far. But he has a beautiful story that he shares, and he's not
Mm-hmm.
even like a camera guy. He's like, I don't really like video. But he was so genuine about it, and he tells an amazing story and a journey. So again, it's giving people a platform to just talk about stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can influence one person, that's
Mm-hmm.
all that matters, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, speaking of that, I feel like you kind of skipped your journey into, you're like, oh yeah, I went to this school and then I applied a lot and then you got it. Is there
Yeah.
any like a little more beef to your story? I'm sure you have like I'm an interesting, intricate story there. But
About getting into footwear?
Into footwear, yeah. And then, later we'll talk about future and what you want to get into.
I think, getting into footwear, there's always
Did you collect sneakers always?
Before I was not a sneakerhead.
No.
I still to this day have never owned a pair of Jordans. So all you people can shun me and be like, what is wrong with you? How do you coexist in this space and never own a pair of Jordans? It's because I could never afford them. I'm sorry. Like growing up, a lot of people resonate with that product specifically because of their childhood and what it meant. And MJ was totally like still playing when I was growing up, but like I grew up in a foreign household. I didn't play sports like, that early on and, can make that connection. So I was never a sneakerhead. Like you'd pick up shoes for $40 at Bob's and, they'd be like really dusty SBs or something like that. And like, I don't know, like, I've always been fond of sneakers because I remember even in like early and on in college, like I'd shop on Karmaloop and for those that remember Karmaloop, it was a really exciting website because you can buy really cheap stuff, but it like felt like it was like luxury streetwear and like branding and like, I remember getting all these like really cheap sneakers that were bright red or like green and like these wild colors. And like, you would always be like a staple, like at a party or something like that because of your weird sneakers. And I always loved having that little piece of your outfit that was different from everybody else. Right. And that's what sneakers offer if that's what you're into. And so during courses throughout industrial design, I started just gravitating more towards footwear. As you start taking courses, you start thinking about what you want to do with your life. I took a footwear studio my junior year or senior year, and I learned a lot. Like you learned how to, make a sandal from scratch. You learned how to design a product from scratch, and like it taught me a lot. But like if I had to summarize like one key influence, it was I went to this very random Fry Boots. They had this like, I think it was like a grand opening on Newbury Street in Boston. And they had this party and I got to meet the creative director at the time, Michael Petrie. He, I believe, works for Toomey Luggage now as the creative director. I could be wrong. It might be outdated. And we had like what felt like an hour-long conversation back then, right? I mean, I was just a kid. I was flipping through my old iPhone that like barely stored any photos, and I showed him this rendering, and I still have the rendering up somewhere on my Instagram, like way back when, and it was very terrible looking back on it now. And he was just like, yeah, just keep going, keep working on it, right? Like, if you want to get into footwear, you can get into footwear. Like, and just him saying that meant so much to me, because I mean, you're talking to a 20-year-old kid at that point. You can that somebody who has experience can weigh so heavily,
Right.
and that was definitely like the clicking point of like, okay, I
Okay.
can go do this as a career path, right?
Right. Right.
And so, you know, his influence, and we stayed connected over the years, you know, from Fry Boots, and then, you know, obviously his transition to Toomey, but then, you know, taking the footwear studio and, you know, making shoes, making products, surrounding yourself with people from even industrial design class who were more footwear focused, right? Who then taught me about Hypebeast website and High Snobiety and all these things. Like, again, it's surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. It's so important.
Yes, definitely. And with the shoes that in the studio, how many people? Do you still have them? Oh, I think I lost you for a second. Yeah, sorry, I think I lost you for a second. Yeah. Do you still have some of the shoes that you made in the studio? How many pairs did you make? Like half pairs or pairs?
We made a half a pair of sandals. I still have them in a box. They're stacked away. I wouldn't be able to grab them right now.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It's probably still somewhere online. I could probably fish it out. But yeah, it was like, because we had it was the first time working on a last, so we had to make a sandal, make the last. You know, design it, wrap it. I CNC'd the outsole in the maker space. Like, it was so much fun, you know.
Yeah.
And I kept that prototype. But yeah, that was probably like the first like hand making of shoes. But then even after that, I remember within the first year of joining Vibram, it was like there was like this big Kickstarter movement. And I remember we were really into like modularity, and there was this Kickstarter where they're like, oh, buy this DIY kit and you can make your own sneaker. I forget what it was called, but basically you like hand sewed it to a cup sole. They provided the leather. You got to like design it. Super cool. I still have that even somewhere.
Oh, it's like a sneaker kit? It's called sneaker kit, maybe?
I forget what it was called. It wasn't exactly sneaker kit, but it was really good. Never took off though. Never took off.
Okay.
But yeah, it was part of that Kickstarter wave.
Fun. Do you feel like the shoemaking experience helped you at Vibram, like for work, or even as like a conversation piece, or?
I have two different answers that are they'll overlap. One, I believe that we wouldn't be successful doing our job if we didn't understand footwear construction, right?
Right, I agree.
We work on products that are a component to footwear.
Yeah.
But they're what you walk on. They're the first thing that touches the ground. They influence the way you walk. You know, how long a shoe lasts, things like that. So if we didn't understand footwear construction, we wouldn't be doing our jobs very well. So yes, I do believe that, to answer your direct question, yeah, it's a big influence, right? You need to be able to understand how footwear is made in order to design the product properly. Yeah. And I think that really separates a lot of designers in the industry, and you can tell when somebody really understands how shoes are made and when somebody who's just drawing lines.
And in your company, do you feel like your colleagues also have this experience, or is it special to you? I feel like you actually kind of went out and did a couple classes, different classes, like with a shoe surgeon, and
So it's a great question. I do believe that, you know, internally we have a lot of knowledge, right? The brand's been around for over 80 years. We're Italian, right? So that's like the history of shoemaking, right? It's like in our bloods to like understand how shoes are made. You know, we have a factory just north of Milan as well in the headquarters. And so you're surrounded by it, right? And I think everybody's got the experience. We have a beautiful facility in China with makers and a sample room. And so you can see the whole process of how footwear is made.
So lucky. You're so lucky.
1000% super fortunate, right?
That's great,
but yeah, I mean, I think internally everybody's really well rounded, and even like newer employees, like we have, you know, even I joke we have books on it, and nobody likes reading about how shoes are made because it is very boring and stale.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very good, right? Like
It's
it's good to
wordy.
understand, you know, the terminology of a last and things like that, and like the girth and like, you know, how it kicks up and toe spring, and like if you don't understand these things, how are you designing a product?
Yeah.
But to the second
Right.
part of your question, yes, I do believe there's something
Mm-hmm.
inherent within myself that like I just like learning weird things. So I was very fortunate to be able to do the shoe surgeon course back in 2018, I want to say. Got
Mm-hmm.
to meet Dom, have a really, really good relationship with him. His business has blown since then, like
Yeah,
completely. Uh,
absolutely.
he really raises up a lot of makers, and he is always, you know, elevating people to start their own thing. He
Yep.
educates people. He's
Yep.
always open and sharing what he knows to
Mm-hmm.
make other people better. And I think that's really, really important,
Yep.
regardless of what you think the shoe surgeon has become.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think
Yep.
that's never changed. And
Yep.
so taking a
And I
course like that, you know, I always just like making stuff. So I'm always willing to like, even if I wear through a pair of shoes, like I'll take that apart and I'll reuse that and then make another
yes.
prototype.
Yes.
I think you can learn a lot designing by making, not
Yeah, I
necessarily
agree.
always by sketching.
Right. Right. So I'm glad. I hope you're still keeping on making some shoes too sometimes. Wait, what? Civil Leather says, does Vibram have any eco-friendly options for soling materials? How can makers find out what is in a Vibram soles?
Two great questions. I'll answer the first one. Yes, we actually launched, we have a really successful eco compound. It's called EcoStep. It actually launched in 1994. So if you think about the sustainability movement, I'll call it, of the past couple of years and how important it is moving forward into our future, this compound's been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've sold it to, you know, Timberland's very environmentally friendly based, you know, to Timberland for a number of years. Burton Snowboards uses it on all their
Mm-hmm.
product, or the
Mm-hmm.
Vibram product.
Mm-hmm.
They're a great partner of ours.
Mm-hmm.
So EcoStep, we have a new one called Noil, which is more sustainable. It
Mm-hmm.
includes 90% petroleum-free ingredients, so they're all natural
Wow.
based, which
Okay.
is really great. So
I
that.
wonder what's it called, the what keeps it together?
So that's the 10%. It's the additives,
10%
right?
additives. Yeah.
There's certain things that you like you can't avoid adding,
Right.
right?
Yeah, no,
Because you still
absolutely.
need durability properties, you
Yep.
need slip resistant
Yep.
properties.
Yep.
Those are the things that you can't find, or haven't found naturally yet. So, but
No, no.
overall, it's a initiative of ours in 2020 that we've been able to work on and launch. So
That's great. And are
we're
they
excited about
also made in US as well, or is it
that.
overseas?
Because we just launched it today, it's overseas, but you never know.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's okay. Whatever you can share with us, and whatever is like, you can pass it as well. And then how can makers find out what is in the Vibram soles is one other question. But Mr. Caldron, who he commented that he was like, oh my God, you don't collect the J's. That's great. Anyway, how does a small business partner with Vibram for midsole and sole design services? How do they partner with Vibram?
That's another really good question. So there's a couple different answers. It is difficult, as you yourself know,
Yes.
as a business owner.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a challenge to get your hands on Vibram product. We obviously have a business in the repair markets, and we have distributors and distribution centers who carry kind of products like blockers, who you can use on different sizes and who are more, you can buff them down and skive them down so they fit different shapes and sizes, and they're more, we'll call them affordable
Yeah.
in that sense,
Yeah.
versus a net fit style, which is size for size, and it depends on your last that you have, and
Yeah.
those are a little harder to reach. It's not an easy answer, right? Because there's a lot of people who have interest, and a lot of small businesses who have interest in working with us, but at the same time, we're only so big, right, of a company.
Right.
So where do you divert your energy and your resources? So
Oh, I'm losing you for a second. I think I
Oh, there
lost
we
you
go.
for a second. Yeah, there we go.
That's all right. My
Yeah.
like very specific response to Mr. I forget what the name was.
Calderon, Mr. Calderon.
Send me a message or an email. It's just david.falar@vibram.com, and just with what you're looking for, and then we could try to have a conversation about it. I always tell people no two projects are ever the same. There's really
I think I'm losing you. Hold on. What's going on?